Well, apparently there's potential good news on the horizon, which is that Ukraine has agreed to a peace proposal with only minor details. But really, is this going to get anywhere? Let's speak now to Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, the first thing we saw was essentially a Kremlin-written peace treaty, which was put in front of Zelensky, who basically went, no chance, as did the coalition of the willing. Now it seems that the US have drafted something and put it in front of Ukraine and have said, oh, yeah, great, that seems reasonable enough. But what's the betting? It goes to the Kremlin and they poo-poo it.
Well, Alex, none of us have seen what the terms are yet, so we don't even know whether it's a sensible suggestion. At the moment, I think there's a lot of heat and noise going on, and I think the final settlement will look even different to what we're seeing now, to tell you the truth. Well, when I say we're seeing it, we're not seeing it because it's being held on tight hold between Ukraine and the United States at the moment. The fact of life is that, you know, if Ukraine has to give up the Donbass fortress region, it's going to be vulnerable, you know, ad infinitum to Russian attack in the future. So I can't believe that they're going to include that as part of the agreement.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, I can't imagine there being a situation where there's something in text that both Russia and Ukraine can actually agree on.
Well, I think it's a tactic, to tell you the truth. I think it's designed to put pressure on the Kremlin. What people don't seem to realize is the Kremlin is holding out for what they call a maximalist solution. Nobody's put any pressure on Putin whatsoever to accede to anything. And until you do, you're not going to get any sense out of the Kremlin. The Kremlin wants everything and a bit more beyond that. So, you know, I think this is part of a power play, Alex, to say, look, 2 out of 3 have agreed. Why aren't you agreeing? But until you put pressure on the Kremlin, you know, they're bully boys. They won't accede to anything unless they get what they want. And as I said, a bit more besides.
I mean, let's imagine then that this is the case, putting pressure on the Kremlin to say, look, everyone else agrees with this, you've got to sign it, and they don't. But then what? Because it seems to me that Putin is quite capable of giving Donald Trump the runaround. I think very few world leaders are, but he is more than able to do it, it seems. And I started to wonder, is there a chance that America might actually be a little bit afraid of Putin?
No, it certainly doesn't want to go to war with Putin over this. It doesn't want to, you know, it's got as big a debt as it had at the end of the Second World War. This is not a good time to go into war against anybody. And war's bad anyway, isn't it? But the fact of life is that, you know, Donald Trump wants the Europeans to take the burden of Ukraine's defense. That's what he's trying to force at the moment. And I'm afraid, you know, our own prime minister and the French president are running into that without even thinking about it. So we've got to be very careful here about what everybody signs up to. There is no security guarantee that you can give the Ukrainians that basically Russia will honor. We know Putin lies. We know that he'll go back on his word in future. Remember, Russia is a guarantor of Ukraine's borders after the Treaty of Budapest in 1994. So, you know, you can't rely on him at all. Similarly, you know, America's saying, look, we'll guarantee your borders. Well, if America's distracted somewhere else, like with China or some other crisis, that guarantee probably isn't going to hold good either. The fact of life is that the best people who can be peacekeepers and defenders of Ukraine are the Ukrainians, and we need to arm them to the teeth to say, look, if there's any messing around in future with Russia, you're in a position to defend yourselves. Because I know what's going to happen. There won't be any direct attack on Ukraine. It'll be little green men and grey zone warfare around the edges. And suddenly, Ukraine's borders will be porous. It won't be enough to provoke a war with America or with Europe. And, you know, by that time, Putin will have switched his focus to Sweden and Finland and the Baltic states.
Wow. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, thank you ever so much for joining us today.